I wonder if you enjoy a bit of people watching. I have to confess it's one of my favourite pastimes, especially when I'm on the tube. I like to try and figure out where people are going or what it is that they do for a job. I make all sorts of interesting backstories up for the people that I come across in my travels. You'd be amazed at the sort of people that there are on the tube. Usually, I'm people watching with no judgment. I'm just passing the time, really. It's just for my interest. I must confess, though, there have been times when, looking around me at the people that I meet and see, I wonder about the choices that they're making. I hope I'm not alone in that. In our gospel lesson today, we begin with Jesus being very carefully watched. Those around him were very interested in what he was doing and why. Jesus wasn't just being watched out of idle curiosity, though. They weren't just trying to fill the time. These religious leaders were trying to catch Jesus out, to try and find a reason to discredit him. So when Jesus attended a meal at an important religious leader's home, those attending wanted to see if they could find some ploy against him. Perhaps he would make a social faux pas. Perhaps he wouldn't know how to behave properly. That's properly according to their standards, of course. But just as Jesus was being watched, he himself was observing those around him. He was paying attention to how they were behaving and what was motivating their actions. And on seeing what was going on at the dinner party, Jesus had some teaching to offer to those gathered. Firstly, he had something to say to them about their seating arrangements. And secondly, he wanted to talk to them about their guest lists. So firstly, on seating arrangements. While enjoying some people watching, Jesus noticed that there was some vying going on for the top seat, for who would be top dog. And so Jesus tells them a story about a wedding banquet. Imagine, he says, that you were invited to a wedding, and you decide to seat yourself in the most important seat. Won't it be uncomfortable when the host comes along and says, "This isn't your seat, you need to move to the lowest place"? Now, we might find that embarrassing if that happened to us, if we had sat ourselves on the top table and then been moved to the table by the kitchens. But we need to understand something of the context to know just what a negative social impact this would have had on someone. In those societies, formal meals were held with a common understanding that social status was fully at play. Tables would usually be U-shaped, and there would be assigned seating that demonstrated people's rank, their social standing. And so it would have been extremely shameful to have sat in a top seat, a high seat, and been asked to move to a lower one. It would have been far more than a oops, sorry moment. And so Jesus was calling out those present in this way, and it would have been shocking. They were trying to ensure that they were in the best possible position. They wanted to be seen to be in a place of status. And Jesus has noticed. And he's not shying away from pointing out what they're doing and telling them that they've got their priorities all wrong. I wonder in what circumstances we try and put ourselves in the top seat, when it is in our lives that we try and put ourselves above others. If there are times when we know that we're allowing our ego to make our decisions. Maybe we do that at work or in social situations. Maybe we even do that at church. Jesus says, take the lower seat and wait for the host to call you up to a higher one. He says, all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Take a different path. Make different choices. I just want to pause for a moment and be clear here who Jesus was talking to. Jesus wasn't telling a room full of widows and orphans to humble themselves. He wasn't telling lepers and outcasts to take the lowest place. Jesus here was talking to the elite of society, to those who had status to set aside. We are all called to live a life of humility, but what that looks like will be different for each of us. Some don't need to intentionally take the lowest seat, because that is where society puts them anyway. Others of us need to consider relinquishing our place in order that others can be lifted up. This turning on its head of cultural understandings of status and power is an invitation into the kingdom of God. Jesus is giving a glimpse of what life with God is like, where our expectations and our understandings are turned upside down. Know your place, says Jesus, and be prepared to give it up. Jesus' second teaching point is to pay attention to your guest list. When you're throwing a party, I wonder who you invite. And what are your reasons for who makes the cut? Does the guest list include family and friends, people you like, people you feel you have to invite, perhaps? Maybe you invite those who you know are good fun at a party. Maybe you invite your boss or your colleagues so that you can make a good impression. It's a minefield. Who do you include and who do you exclude? Jesus is pretty clear here. He says you ought not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbours. It was common practice in those days to invite people to parties who could in some way benefit you socially. People expected others to reciprocate or pay back their good deed, their invitation. And so, of course, it made sense to invite your friends and your family, and, of course, your rich neighbours. However, Jesus says this is the wrong guest list, or at least the guest list is too narrow. Rather, Jesus says, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. And this is a list, of course, of those who were socially and religiously excluded at the time. And Jesus said these are the kinds of people that we should intentionally embrace. If you were paying attention, you will have noticed that we missed a few verses out of that chapter from Luke. And in those verses, Jesus has performed a healing. He has healed a man with dropsy, which I'm told is edema in today's language. And Jesus lived what he preached. He ate with outcasts and with those that others avoided. He healed those that others would go out of their way to have nothing to do with. The world's hospitality is conditional. Individuals are vetted. The terms and the conditions of the invitation are decided in advance. You can come to the party as long as. I'll invite that person because they invited me. Kingdom hospitality is unconditional. It is without rules and entry barriers. And so who makes our guest lists? Who do we tend to eat with? Who is invited into our gatherings? And how might the Spirit be prompting us, individually and as a community, to expand our guest lists? Kingdom hospitality that Jesus invites us to extend isn't actually so much about who the other is or isn't. It's about who we are and how we want to live. But perhaps you're sitting there thinking, well, that's all great and good, Ali. But I'm never invited to those parties. I'm never the one throwing the party. Maybe you're wondering when you are going to receive the invitation. Maybe you feel as if you don't make the cut, that you are always somehow dropped off the end of the invitation list. If that's where you find yourself this morning, then there is good news. You are invited to the best party of all. Jesus is inviting you to life in the kingdom. All that you need to do is to accept. There is a place of honor for each of us at the table of God. No one who accepts Jesus' invitation is excluded. The writer of Hebrews puts it this way: keep on loving one another and do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. Hospitality is love and care that is particularly tangible, providing meals and lodging and extending welcome into families and communities. The author of Hebrews gives us various circumstances in which we should be exercising this love to those in prison, within marriages, when remembering our leaders. And we also are warned against the love of money. We have been given thanks today, haven't we, for the financial provision of God for our church. We know that we need money to function in the world. Money in itself isn't evil or wrong. It's the love of money. If we love money more than we love people, we will have a very difficult time following the teaching in Hebrews 13 or the teachings of Jesus. We are reminded in these verses that God will never leave us nor forsake us, that we can be confident in God's provision and love in our lives, and that we are called to share what we have received with others. So next time that you're enjoying some people watching, paying attention to those around you, I invite you to consider whether you should let them know that they are invited to the greatest party of all. To know your place is to know that you are welcome in the kingdom of God. We have so much to be thankful for reaching our MIA appeal target, for milestones in our lives, for many, many other things. But most of all, we should give thanks for our place in the kingdom of God. And so I invite you to join us at 2:00 as we gather in the chapel and we praise and we worship together. I want to finish today with some words from Hebrews that we heard earlier. And if you've heard nothing else of what I've said today, remember these words. Through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips that openly profess his name. And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices, God is pleased.